All right, continuing the conversation on a Monday. I hope you had a great weekend. I did, and I hope you did as well. My next guest, Tom Savidge, is a research fellow for the American Institute of Economic Research. Tom, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me, Steve.
All right, nice to have you here. All right, so the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Elizabeth Warren's love child, right? This is her dream, and it's under attack from the Trump administration. In fact, they've basically gotten rid of it. And they say that the medical debt rule could backfire. What does that mean? Please help us here. Medical debt is something that concerns many, many people. Tom, tell me.
Oh, sure. So, excuse me. This story goes back last year, summer of 2024. The CFPB proposed a rule that would strike medical debt from all credit reports. Sounds great, right? A lot of Americans have medical debt, especially low-income Americans. But inevitably, like almost all other CFPB actions, it was going to do more harm than good, and good intentions don't lead to good outcomes. Because even if you wipe that medical debt from those credit reports, and even if you wipe that from the lender, potential lenders are not going to forget that. The CFPB's own studies point to low-income Americans having some of the highest medical debt. So they might charge higher interest rates or even back out of the lending market altogether. And low-income Americans especially will have less access to credit, and they could inevitably end up going toward black market lenders. And so that rule was finalized. It was supposed to go into effect in March. It got a stay. And then now with the regulatory freeze and pending review, it seems like everything's on hold at the CFPB. But crazy enough, back in January, the agency sent letters to state governments endorsing a similar law, saying that if we can't get this done, the states need to do it themselves. So when they're looking at any sort of constraints put on that agency, they see them as obstacles to be sidestepped, not rules to be followed.
So the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, is it dead? Is it gone? Is it on its way out the door? What's going to happen here?
Well, that remains to be seen. It seems like there's a hearing March 3rd where a federal judge has put a stay on some of those executive actions trying to rein in the agency. But let's hope that if it's not gone, it's at least severely constrained. Because what does business as usual look like for the CFPB? Actually, currently, SEC Commissioner Hester Pierce back in 2017 wrote that business as usual for the CFPB usually means going around constraints put on them by either Congress or the White House. There were rules saying that the CFPB couldn't go after auto dealers. They did it anyway. There were internal memos released saying within the agency saying, how can we get around the political and legal fallout of us circumventing the rules on us? And quite frequently, they were going after mortgage lenders, even after the statute of limitations had gone up. And so really, it is, even though the agency has only been around for about a decade, they have a history of just flouting the law and trying to get around any sort of constraints or controls that government puts on them.
Right. So the other thing that I thought was interesting here, the payday lenders. You know, talking about alternative credit, right? Payday lenders are pretty predatory. I mean, I think it's fair to say they have pretty high interest rates and so forth. But for some people in lower income communities, it's what they have. And the CFPB went after payday lenders as well under the Dodd-Frank Act back in 2016 and had some interactions. What do you make of that? What does the CFPB? I mean, it sounds great. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I mean, it's a great sounding name. Should help me out. Should help you. Should help out the folks. But it hasn't lived up to it, has it? At all.
That's exactly right, Steve. And to quote the president from way back in the 2016 campaign, sounds good, doesn't work. And that seems to be the story of the CFPB. Going after payday lenders. I'm not saying they're heroes. I'm not saying they're perfect. But like you said, sometimes that's the only form of credit low-income Americans can access. And so when you're shutting out payday lenders, what's left? Nothing, or worse comes to worse, they go to the black market. They go to organized crime. And now those guys are super predatory. any action, and as my colleague Pete Earle and I documented in both our public comment opposing that medical debt rule and in a recent article for Reason magazine, every time the CFPB has tried to intervene in the name of consumers, it ends up doing more harm than good, and it disrupts the market too. It's creating a lot of uncertainty. Um, Financial markets, which are it's one of the most regulated sectors of the American economy. It's
Absolutely.
just another axe over potential lenders' head, thinking
Right.
if they don't like what I'm doing, the axe is going to come down. I'm going to get the book thrown at me.
Let me ask you one
And
other thing.
so,
Let me ask you one other
exactly, yeah,
thing.
sure.
Got a moment here. Unrelated, but something Donald Trump has suggested, reducing in a credit card interest rates to 10% maximum. What would that do to the credit card industry if that were to come to pass, do you think?
Well, it's unfortunately another thing where that sounds great, but I think it would do more harm than good, because a credit card cap is a price control. And like any other price control, it's not allowing prices to communicate how much of something is available and how badly other people want it. So when prices aren't allowed to change and communicate that information in real time, people have to use less accurate proxies. And now let's mind you that credit card companies can change credit limits at will. So even if they cap interest rates at 10%, if the law caps interest rates at 10%, it's not all else remains equal. Credit card companies may respond in kind and say, okay, since we're capping the interest rates, we're
Right.
going to lower the credit limits for many Americans.
That's what I figured. So that one, sounds great, but it doesn't deliver great results. Tom Savidge, research fellow, American Institute for Economic Research. Greatly appreciate you being here. Get well, my friend. I know you're carrying a little bit of the cough around like we have all had, but hang in there. You'll get better. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Steve. Good to talk to you.
There you have it. Tom Savidge, everybody. Look, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau sounds great on paper, but in reality, not so great. I'll take a break and be back. It's the Steve Gruber Show.